Happy Thursday, everybody. Lots to go through today. Lots of images to process, and we got some questions to answer. So let's actually start with some questions. First up, Aaron was wondering about the difference between exposure and intensity in a light. I think that's a really, really great question. So it's something that's come up more increasingly in with software. So just so you know, intensity is like a linear multiplier of the value. So it's like if you have a light source with a white color that's 111 in the RGB scale, intensity simply multiplies that. So if you have an intensity of 4, it'll be like the equivalent of being 4, 4, 4, 4, or 0.3 would be 0.3, 0.3, 0.3. Exposure is based on like an exponential growth that's for photography. So you open it up a stop or you do more exposure on something, it's more of a exponential growth. So like opening up 1 will be 1 stop, 2 will be 2 stops, which is actually like 4 times as much light. And I think 3 stops is 9 times as much light. So that's the difference between the two. It's mostly meant to be like a user-friendly thing, which is because you'll work with art directors and directors that'll say, okay, we need this 1 stop brighter or half a stop darker. And you're able to do that with the exposure versus an art director that says 4 times brighter, which you can do it that way. So that's the difference between those two. Also, a deep talk about camera focal length in CG would be great sometime down the line. Oh, I didn't see that part of the question. I will respond to this with a link to, I did a whole focal length talk on a Facebook Live a while back. So I'll find the link to that and I'll put that in here. Question 2 was from Pearl. So great question again, Aaron. So Pearl's doing the work in progress on Mr. Bean, 6 lights. It's taking, I believe she said 6 hours to render. Couple things. There are countless variables that go into render time, right? There's the amount of geometry, the materials, the samples, the actual CPU you're using, the renderer, lots to go into it. So there isn't a normal, quote unquote, normal amount of time it takes to render. That being said, for still like this, I also don't know what resolution you're rendering it at. 6 hours does seem kind of long. It seems on the long side. And like I said, I don't know what your computer that you're using. But that being said, images take what they take to render to look good, right? Like people are talking in the conversation about, reducing your samples. That's certainly true. But the one thing that you don't want to do ever is decrease the samples or decrease the resolution to a point where it degrades the image, where it's like visually problematic. You know what I mean? Like, and this is something that comes with experience. But, because like 6 hours isn't bad because theoretically you could just kick it off right before you go to bed at night and then wake up in the morning and it's done. So anything less than 8 hours is not a problem. Like because at that point it doesn't matter if it's 15 minutes or 6 hours. It's just when you're in bed anyway. So that being said, my problem solving approach to it is basically like, okay, so it's taking longer than I suspect. Let's start with just the model. I'll render just the model. Like, how long does that take? No lights, no nothing, or maybe just no lights, no nothing. If that's pretty fast, okay, now let's add a light or add one of my lights in. Okay, if that's renders pretty fast, cool. Let's add the materials in. Is it still like, because usually when you add something, it'll spike you'll see a major difference between those two. And at that point you're like, oh, if it's the material, maybe my texture maps are too high a resolution, which with this, it's not the case. My guess is that it's probably the sample settings, either in the render settings or in the individual light. So once you identify, either which light or if it's the global settings, then you just want to like tick those down in value and make sure that we're, and lower them to the lowest they could be without a visual difference, if that makes sense. So not the most scientific answer I could give, but that's the art side of what we're doing in this industry. Let's see. Oh, okay. And once I get to DePolys, we'll take a look at your video there. And then, yeah, okay. So let's hop over into the images. All right. All right, since we were talking, Pearl, about your image anyway, let's just go ahead and get into it. So I like the shaping that you're getting across the face. This is looking really nice. It's a little bit very hot right there. Just like, you might want to watch out for that. One of the things about his lips naturally is they're kind of just like diffused, painted with like a lipstick. It would be nice if there was like a little bit of specular highlight on there. In fact, let me open this up real quick, because there was something I noticed about, and I meant to mention this yesterday. If you like, look at her lips here. Like, do you see that nice like glisten along the base? Getting something like that on his lip would be really beneficial. If you could try and pull something like that, that would be very cool. Other goodies. So in terms of his hair looks pretty gray and dusty. It feels like there's like a blue light coming on here. I would keep his hair a little bit more on the warm side. And same thing, there just seems to be like a little bit of cool light on this side that's filling in. And it's a little different than the surroundings, because we've got like it looks like a yellow wall back here. We've got hardwood here. So we've got warm light coming in this way. So really what would happen is it's just kind of all warm light around him. So I would warm up this side of his face and some of those fill values in the hair. The eyes are still a little marble-like. I love this shadow right in here. That was looking great. It would be nice if we had something similar on this side. But you just want to decrease. It's basically, you want to lift the gamma on the eyes if you can, to get some of these darker values to lift up a little bit. But all in all, this is looking really good. I just think I would just hit those notes, and then we'll go from there. All right, Aaron, with your question, I will jump into your image here. We've got your image and we've got your reference. The first thing that stands out to me between these two is just the dark point near the foreground. It would, like, I love this kind of like overall haze that you're getting, but it would be nice if we had just a little bit more of a darker value closer to the camera. Let's see if I can do something like that, and then just go ahead and, oh, dang it, I messed up. I meant to change the levels on a different layer, and then we can let's take all this, paste it. Okay, now we can change the levels. Sorry about that. Take that down a little bit, just shift it a little bit brighter. And now what I can do is pull off some of that on the background here. Okay. So now it's just like a matter of darkening some of those values more in the foreground, allowing that haze to lift up as we go back into space. The other big thing is we need to do something about the ground. So it would be great to, it doesn't have to be this cobblestone, but there may be brick, something to make the ground not look like it's a super clean, super smooth, like concrete, like perfectly paved floor. It'll also be nice to get some difference, like to darken that, to create some difference between, just mock this up real quick. Between the, like the overall value of the ground and the surrounding areas. Like if we, let's do this. If we make this darker, you can see immediately how that makes the rest of the image look A, brighter, more sunnier, and B, it just like helps ground the ground, and it will allow the other stuff to kind of separate out, because you just want, like right now there's a little bit of a monochromatic feel to this. It's all just kind of a tan warm hue, so getting like the greens on the plant, looks like we're missing some textures there, so getting some greenery in there, getting some variation in there will be a lot of help. Like in here you see the differences in the kind of pink walls, the dark here, the red here, the green in here, the blue in the background, just a little bit more variation in tones. But really cool stuff. It's a great start. Love the haze that you're getting overall. Also, last thing I meant to mention was the sky up here. Just make sure you fill that in with like a sky color back there, because that I know it doesn't seem like much, but that'll actually make a big difference. Annabelle. So one thing you want to watch out for is lighting over black. I used to have a boss that would just get so mad if he saw you lighting over black, because it can actually lead to a false read, meaning that when you surround something with something really dark, it actually makes the character seem brighter when really, like we're only dealing with a very small part of the range of color that we could be dealing with, or a value that we could be dealing with, right? So you make sure to like throw it into some sort of environment. The other thing about your reference is so this is a shift that happens in this character throughout the film. So, this 1 and 2 are from when he's a jerk, basically. And 3 is later on in the movie when he kind of warms up, when he tastes the ratatouille and he sees a change. And you can see the visual difference. We've got kind of a steely blue color on his skin versus a warmer, rosier color. So I think that steely blue color would work out really, really well. I love the shape of this light here, this one that's kind of bouncing up underneath him. I think that's working really, really well. I also love the kind of the subsurface scattering you're getting back here on the wings and in here. There are a couple of sharp shadow points, like I see it here. I saw one other place too. It's just kind of here on the side. But just watch out for that. I think it might be caused from the rim light. You just want to make sure that there's a little bit of radius on that, so that's a little bit of a softer edge, I guess, right there too. And then I would recommend trying to get possibly going a little darker on the cape itself to get a little variation between the cape and the torso, and the wings, because they're all kind of falling in a similar hue. Maybe a little bit more ambient occlusion, shadow darkening in here, because that area is looking a little flat. And then if you want, there's like these jewels that are on his cane and on his, I don't know, whatever's holding the cape together, whatever that's called. And you may want to highlight those a little bit if that's the story and the character that you want to tell there. So really good stuff there. Ashley, I brought in your original just to show the progress that we've made on this. Like, look at the amount of focus that we're now seeing on the character versus what we had in the original. How much warmer and happier and all that goodness that we're seeing out of the characters. I think that's working out really, really well. I think we can pull back the saturation a touch more on the character here. And one thing that I probably caused from the original was I do like this shaping that's happening on his face. More him than her, but it would be nice to get a little bit of that. A little bit of that back in here, just like more on the, just to create a little bit of variation in here. And I think, you know what it is? I would add a light that's specular only, because both of the characters are feeling a little bit diffuse. That would kind of get some specular highlights on his skin there. But this stuff is a little bit still just like a touch too saturated. I love the color of her eyes. The ding I would put up there, and same thing with him, up, because it's a reflection of the light coming down from overhead. But I think that's what I would do next. But I think this is looking. I think we're getting closer and closer every single time. Dani, cool stuff. So. This is a lovely wedge test. This is something that's very common in the industry. So you'll show up to dailies and you'll be like, okay, I made a wedge test of this bounce light. What do you think? So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6, 7, right? And this allows the art director the opportunity to give feedback to the point of saying like, hey, usually she would say something like, okay, let's just make it brighter. And you're like, okay, but I've got this wedge test. So is there a level that you would like? And they would kind of step through and be like, okay, this, maybe a little more. Okay, yeah. In this 4 to 5 range is where we want it. 7 is a little bright. Even 6 might be good. But let's try 5. Let's try 5 as our bounce value. With a little bit, because I see there's a nice shadow here. I see there's some nice shadows in here. It would be, make sure that we're getting some nice shadows in here as well. But I think this level of bounce is the type of value that we're looking for. The other thing you want to do, I'm realizing this too, is get some displacement or bump or something in these bricks because they're reading as flat, and you want them to pick up a little shadow in there too. But really great stuff. Okay, so next step, we've got this bounce. We'll get and then let's bring the key light back in there, and then we'll take a look at this with those levels, and then we'll go from there. Also, try running an ambient occlusion pass. That'll really help. Like, do you see how this is kind of like there's no contact shadow in the corner of this ceiling? That'll really help that out too. So I would do that for the next iteration. Great job with that wedge test. And that's, again, something I love doing with my work. Okay, for this guy. I like the color on his face. First thing I noticed was there's like a hard line here. Could be a reflection. I'm not quite sure what's causing that, so just look into that. The other thing that we would do is for his tentacles, I would just make sure that they are staying a little bit more red, because I would like for them to stay. I like that's kind of their hero color right now, and I kind of want them to stay even in the shadow. They're getting a little bit bluish greenish in the shadow, and I would like for them to stay like nice and red, to kind of match that color. So something more along those lines. Watch out for that, and then watch out for that hard line. And then I'm looking at this, it's feeling pretty good. Just soften, like increase the radius of that a little bit more, just because like I like that shadow, but I want it to be a touch softer. And then I would brighten the eyes just a touch more. And yeah, and we'll go from there. And for your spooky one, very cool. I think overall we can just add, now it's time to start, like, let's see if we can add some diffusion, some glow, some like, you wanna feel a little bit of that atmosphere, in the space. You want it to, I mean, I know this is kind of like a theatrical scene, but like, let's imagine, there's a stagehand off stage that's pushing some fog into the scene, and maybe we can just add a little bit of fog in as well. So it goes from like this to having a little bit of glow, a little bit of haze, a little bit more of that environment-y feel to it, and then we'll go from there. All right, Polly. Okay, so let's take a look at your video here. All right, with something like this, it's almost like it's happening too slowly. Like it's almost like too gradual, and it's not going to scare anybody. So basically, I feel like she should either pop on or flicker on or come on a little bit stronger. Like something scary that kind of pops off of it. That would be my recommendation with the movement on that. I think your sky is beautiful. I think that's really, really nice. I want to feel, so I'm feeling some of the magentas from the sky and the purples on the house, but like here I'm almost feeling like a warmer light, and it's almost like I want to possibly feel like some of these blue values in there. The depth of field is a little bit strong, like so the difference between the house and the tree. It feels a little miniature-y. I like where you're heading there. But I would just watch out for that. In terms of the car floating in the water, keep looking at some reference, because there's something not quite right about the way it looks underwater versus the way it looks above water. Like it might just need to be murkier under there, with more of like an edge around the side. But there's something that's not quite feeling underwater about it. And also, like, these reflections over here don't feel like a watery reflection. It may just be because it's like too smooth and there's no ripples in it. But just something you may want to look out for there. And then in terms of the character herself, I would just ask yourself whether or not this glowiness is illuminating anything. So perhaps as she comes on, it would be nice if like you got a little bit of rim here and a little bit of light shining on the surrounding area, so you can feel her presence in the environment. But I think that would be a good next step there. Grayson, I love lots of good stuff going in here. Love this like glowy red color you have going on. I would play up that it's almost like these God rays shooting out of here. Especially on this side, I would play up a little bit more of that. But I love the haze and the softness. I love this buildup that you've got going back here. I really like the camera angle. The other thing I would focus in on is getting this car to feel a little bit more car-like. Like it feels kind of dingy. It would be more reflections on the windshield, on the hood. I'm not quite sure what this light is on the ground. I don't know. It almost feels like it's from a headlight on the car, but the headlights aren't on. So I would almost tone that down and just keep the focus back on the house, maybe. Unless you want to tell a little bit more of a story there. And then you can pull a little bit of this haze off of this foreground element too. And I would also perhaps consider making this more contrasty. I know it's like the way that this one kind of pops a little bit more. Just like a little bit more. It's kind of low res too. Just to get that just to get the character just to get that character reading off just a little bit more. And maybe, yeah, like I said, just some saturation increase right around the center there, just to get that to pop just a little bit more. Really great stuff though, really pretty. I think this is, I say for the next iteration, give it a higher resolution, and then I think you're matching this. I think we've got the reference in a good place. So I think just the render on the next iteration would be great. All right, Kat, we've got your 2 iterations here. It's also shifted. I think that I like this one better. I think there's more shaping in the coat, a little more variation in there, and that really helps out a lot. I like the headlights that you've got playing up. The one thing about that is you want them to be brighter near the base and then fade off as we go. You've got a little bit of that, but I think right around here we can go much brighter to really feel like they're emanating from near the camera. We have light source coming out of here. I'm just looking at these hard shadows that are being cast around here. I think we need to increase the radius on that to soften those shadows a little bit. Like, it's fine here because this, again, feels like there's maybe a small light source being cast there. But she is a much larger light source, so the shadows that are coming off that would be softer. And actually, this shadow would be softer too because it's like closer to the light source and it gets diffused as it goes back into space. Watch out for this. I'm not quite sure what that is. If that's a shadow, that's too stark as well. And then if you can add a little bit of haze back behind the house, just to get the house to pop off a little bit forward. But really cool stuff. I think this is coming along really well. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Yeah, I think that's a good place to move on from there. And all right, that is it for today. If you all have any questions, make sure you throw them in the comments. I did just see, let's make sure, I'm going to hit this one more time because I'm going a few minutes earlier than I normally do. Not that. Let's see if we have any updates. Anybody else? Yeah, Keven. Okay. There's been a couple. All right, I'll talk about Jeff, and I will talk about Keven while I've got these open. Okay. Love this color scheme here. Ooh, that's nice. Just bright God rays coming off there. Okay, let's take a look at this. So same thing with the God rays. I think we can go a little darker in the core of this house. So it's like we've got haze here and haze behind. Let's darken a touch in between those two, just to create some distinction between them. I would kill these orange lights here and just keep it about these because they're not really adding too much. Like, they're just kind of like there, and I think that these lights are doing the job on their own. So kill those, create a little bit more brightness on the ground, especially here, because these lights are shining straight out, and generally speaking, car headlights shine downward, like towards the ground a little bit, so they're not blinding all the other drivers. So just push that down there. I love love the haze that we're getting out of this. I love the Rick and character here. I would play up a little more rim light on the foreground character and a little bit darker core on that. And then I would also, just looking at the reference, I would, maybe not to that level and that not quite that purple, push up the blue saturate or the blue-green saturation on the surroundings a little bit too. Let's lean into that color a little more too. But really beautiful stuff, Jeff. All right, Kevin, you have your reference here. Beautiful reference. This is crazy how close that match is. So that, and then in yours, I think brighter inside these windows. Like you can see how much the glow from the inside here plays up into our final look. And this just feels a little bit dingier. I love that we can see around this character a little bit more. But I think you can, I basically, let's go ahead. Actually, let me open this in Photoshop real quick. Because what I'm seeing is, I just want to take these values. I just want to push them brighter. Like not looking at the moon. I want to get these into like this range a little bit, right? Because now it's like just like a little more saturation, a little more pop, a little more glow, a little bit more, you can kind of feel it a little bit stronger. And then once you have this, then you can start to add in some haze in the background. And then, I mean, obviously, because I just did it, it's now revealing some more contrasty stuff in the ground. So you might need to add a little bit more, because this is such a big, bright blue sky, a little more blue saturation in the foreground as well. But I love the color scheme. It's just a matter of taking what you have and pushing it further. So, but yeah, so I just looked in your comments that you haven't done comp work yet. So let's do that for the next iteration. Really get in there, tweak the colors, push it. Let's get it closer to the final image. All right, that is it for today. Great job, everybody. Let me just because I hate missing somebody. Okay, we are in good shape. All right, I'll talk to y'all very soon. Happy lighting, everybody.